You think you know these men, the icons, the legends, the faces that defined an entire era of Hollywood. But what we're about to expose will completely shatter the image you've been carrying in your head, because one of these transformations is so shocking, most people refuse to believe it's the same person. 15 legends. 50 years of secrets. Let's get into it. Number 15, Clint Eastwood, the man with no name. Squinting into dusty sunsets, a cigarette hanging from his jaw, radiating a kind of cool the screen has never quite replaced. That was the 60s. Today, he's in his 90s, and still directing films that make the critics scramble for their notebooks. The jawline softened. The silence didn't. Number 14, Al Pacino in 1972. He walked into a restaurant in The Godfather and walked out as the most electrifying face in American cinema. Sharp cheekbones, dark intensity, a stillness that made you hold your breath. Fast forward to now. The hair is wild, the voice deeper, the eyes carrying 5 decades of roles that carved themselves into him. Number 13, Robert De Niro, Taxi Driver. Raging Bull star, a transformation artist who physically remade himself for every role. Back then, lean and dangerous, a young man's fury barely contained. Today he's still working, still commanding every room he enters. But the fury has aged into something quieter, and somehow more terrifying. But hold on, because we're about to get to the name that broke the internet when recent photos surfaced. Stay with us. Number 12, Jack Nicholson. The grin. That's what you remember. The grin that could mean anything from pure joy to complete menace. In Easy Rider, in Chinatown, in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that grin launched 1,000 nightmares. He stepped away from Hollywood over a decade ago. Recent sightings? The grin is still there. Everything else has transformed in ways his fans are still processing. Number 11, Dustin Hoffman. The Graduate * introduced him as the most uncomfortable man in the most uncomfortable situation. And he made it art. Small in frame, enormous in presence. Decades later, the intensity never left. It just learned how to wear a different face. Number 10, Gene Hackman. Gravel-voiced, working-class dangerous, he was Hollywood's favorite pressure cooker. The French Connection made him a superstar. Then, at the height of his powers, he walked away, retired, vanished into New Mexico, until 2025, when he was found deceased at his home. A quiet, reclusive end to one of the loudest careers in cinema history. Number 9, Sidney Poitier. The most elegant man in any room he ever entered. A pioneer who carried the weight of history with grace that most people couldn't manage carrying groceries. In his prime, sharp suits, dignified posture, a gaze that dared the world to underestimate him. He passed in 2022, but the photographs from his final years show a man who aged the way cathedrals age. Slowly, beautifully, and with total authority. You've seen the dignified ones. You've seen the ones who aged on their own terms. But the transformation coming up in 3 spots. Nobody saw it coming. Number 8, Paul Newman. Blue eyes that should have been illegal. Racing driver. Philanthropist. Possibly the most effortlessly beautiful man the 20th century produced. As he aged, something strange happened. He just kept getting better looking. The silver hair arrived, and somehow the blue eyes got more intense. He passed in 2008, but his later photographs look like an argument against the idea that youth is when you peak. Number 7, Warren Beatty. Hollywood's ultimate golden boy. Jaw-dropping, self-possessed, completely aware of exactly how charming he was. Bonnie and Clyde made women across America forget their own names. He's in his late 80s now. The last public appearances showed a man barely recognizable from the icon on those vintage film posters. A transformation that stopped his longtime fans cold. Number 6, Marlon Brando. The original. The blueprint. A streetcar named Desire introduced a physicality to acting that rewrote every rule. Raw. Magnetic. Threatening in the best possible way. And then one of Hollywood's most documented transformations. By the time The Godfather rolled around, he'd already changed. By his final years, the man who redefined masculine beauty had become something almost mythological in his difference from what he'd been. He passed in 2004, But the before and after remains the most extreme in this entire list. Number 5. Steve McQueen. The king of cool. No one drove a car like him. No one wore a turtleneck like him. No one made doing absolutely nothing look quite so dangerous. He passed in 1980 tragically young, and so his transformation is frozen, suspended. We never got the silver-haired version. What remains are only the images of him at his peak, which somehow makes the absence louder than any dramatic change could be. Number 4. Charlton Heston. He parted the Red Sea on screen and barely broke a sweat. Chiseled in a way that seems architecturally impossible, commanding in a way that felt almost prehistoric. As he aged, the architecture shifted broader, softer. But the command never left his eyes. Not once. Not even at the very end. Number 3. James Coburn. Long-limbed, laconic, with a smile like a switchblade. Coburn was the coolest supporting actor in any room until he became the coolest lead. Arthritis ravaged him in his later years, visibly reshaping his hands, his posture, his movement. He spoke about it openly. And yet the charisma remained, proof that what makes a star isn't structural. Number 2. Peter O'Toole. Lawrence of Arabia staring into a desert sun. Pale blue eyes, impossible cheekbones, a face that looked like it was designed by someone with a grudge against ordinary beauty. Over the decades, the face became more lived in, the frame thinner, the energy more spectral. By his final performances, he looked like the ghost of the most beautiful man who ever lived. He passed in 2013, still magnetic to the last frame. And the number 1 most shocking transformation on this entire list. Number 1. Burt Reynolds. In the 1970s, no one on the planet was more effortlessly, aggressively, almost offensively attractive. Smokey and the Bandit. That cosmopolitan centerfold. The mustache. The swagger. The grin that made the decade feel like one long Saturday night. And then procedures, public struggles, financial collapse, fluctuating health. The transformation wasn't slow or graceful. It was documented in real time, in tabloids, on red carpets, in interviews where the mask occasionally slipped. He passed in 2018, and what his story exposes isn't just one man's change. It's what happens when an entire identity is built on something time was always going to take. That's the real transformation this video was always building toward. Not the wrinkles, not the gray hair. The question of what's left when the thing you were famous for being starts to disappear. Speaking of transformations nobody saw coming, there are 11 more Hollywood legends whose recent appearances left fans completely speechless. The before and after gap is even wider. Some of them you'll recognize immediately. Some of them you won't recognize at all. That video is next.